YouTube vintage stereo restorers, and all those that are interested in rebuilding these small tube amps from the 1960s and 50s. I'm kind of at the point where I'm replacing the electrolytic cap. So I was looking at this thing. I hadn't worked on one of these for a little while. It's actually 5 different caps inside this firecracker tube here. Maybe not that great idea to put them in like that. Sometimes I've restuffed things like this, but of this era, if you take this waxy end out, you see there's a black tar inside, and you have to heat it up to get the existing caps out and really fight with it. And I don't know if it's the best thing to smell. I don't know if it's the best thing to handle. I think this just needs to be disposed of. These are the caps that are going to replace that one there. So I've got 47450, which has got a tuck in here somewhere. 2 100 microfarads to replace the 80s. And these are Mia caps. So I needed a place to fasten these, so I put in a terminal board. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. Then another 47 for screen voltage. That could go somewhere in here. And then over here for the cathode, you need either 50 microfarad 25 volt or 100 microfarad would even be better. The cathodes of the 4 output tubes are tied together, and then they power the 2 heaters of the 12AX7s. A unique arrangement. This is actually, if you've ever worked on a Dynaco SCA35, which is a great amp, but they're AC powered heaters for the 2 12AX7s, and no matter what you do, it's very hard to get rid of that hum. Very hard. You can get it down, but not rid of. This won't have any hum in the phono section unless there's a ground missing or something. And so basically what you're looking at is about 6 volts of bias on each tube. We'll talk about that more later. The one thing I did was an old radioman's trick, and I actually shot a video of installing this terminal strip. And it was coming up on 18 minutes because of what I had to do to install it and not getting the right camera angle and all these things that happen. So I'm just going to tell you how to do it quickly. So the original terminal strip, there's actually a tab here and a screw and a speed clip. Same here. Over here there isn't. You'd have to drill through into the chassis awfully close to the base control. And I would prefer, and this is an old radioman's trick from years ago, if you have a steel chassis, not an aluminum one, it won't work, but a steel chassis, you can actually solder a terminal strip right to that chassis. And it doesn't take much. A little fine sandpaper under this one, a little fine one here to rough it up. And here I have, this is a Weller 7400 soldering iron with a 45 watt heater and that big chisel tip. And this is the old kind that screws in with an Edison base, it's called. And this type of tip, I call this a central office iron. When I worked for the phone company, we had these all over. We had them on little trolleys with a ladder, and they were plugged in all day long. And some of them went back to the 1940s and 50s. That's how long they had been there. The handle and the cord were there at least. The heaters were replaced. The chisel tips were replaced. And here's an interesting thing. I'm not sure why this is, but I've been doing this for a while, soldering things on like that. This 45 watt does a better job than you know those Weller soldering guns with the 2 different wattages. I think one is 100, one's 140 or something like that. There's a couple different models of them. Technically, they should have superior heat. I always found it a bit of an issue. Actually getting it to stick with those. It wasn't hot enough. This iron's hotter. This is a direct heated iron, whereas the Weller's, it's actually a transformer. So you have a primary winding and a secondary winding, which includes the tip. But there's so many different soldering irons out there, and there's stations that have thermostatically regulated. This kind of work, you don't need a thermostatically regulated soldering iron. You need like this. See, then I have another one the same body, only I have a 25, ooh, that was a lot. Anyway, 25 watt tip in that one, and that's what I'll use for most of the connections. And really, you can't go too wrong. You can't, to overheat some of these, it's not like you're dealing with diodes or anything like that. You're just going to have to desolder along here and then resolder here. So we're going to get a couple in there, maybe one or two in there. It should be pretty cool. I'd like to do a video that shows me doing all the work. The only thing is, I find these days with short attention spans, and I'd like a little feedback from people that watch this. Do you mind having a video that goes on like for 25 minutes of soldering and unsoldering, and maybe I could put some nice background music with it, whatever. Anyway, next stage is get these caps, and thanks for watching and listening.